Been together for, what is it, about 5 years now? Yeah, that sounds about right. It's been about 5 years, a little over.
Do you ever look at some people on social media and stop to wonder how and why they even exist in the first place? Well, this Brony is a clear example. This is Matt Beard, known across the various degenerate corners of the internet as Jin1515 or Skippy.
Hey there everyone, Skippy here.
On the surface, he's a lonely, introverted young man from Minnesota who fell deeply in love with a unicorn named Twilight Sparkle, a cartoon character from the children's show My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. But underneath that surface, he's a menace on the internet offender list.
If you can't resist looking at something that you don't like, then use NetNanny or whatever popular parental control software is being used for browsers these days.
Matt channeled his emotional attachment into this handmade plushie he purchased at auction for either $400 or $600. The figure is contested. Matt took her to restaurants, museums, and coffee shops. He celebrated her birthday and even married her over Skype in the Universal Life Church. But this disturbing marriage isn't all there is to Matt's name. Over the years, Matt has accumulated a trail of strange controversies. He launched harassment campaigns against artists who drew suggestive fan art of his wife.
People are freaking out about it because, oh, that's the guy who married Twilight Sparkle and wrote that letter to the adult pony artist saying, "Don't draw nasty pictures of my wife."
He performs deeply unsanitary acts with plushies, and he documented several of them publicly with pride. And that's not all. Matt has made posts about drinking his urine, substance use. He was involved in leaked private conversations where he admitted to liking Nazi uniforms. In recent years, Matt moved his weird obsession from My Little Pony to another kiddies show called Paw Patrol, and this time, he developed a strong, intimate attraction to Rocky, the rescue dog. This isn't a case of someone living an unconventional lifestyle among bronies. This is a story of mental illness on full display on the internet. Who's Matt Beard, and what is his documented degeneracy about? Get ready as we unravel the story behind this brony who had the average intelligence to marry a plushie. Now, before we get started, let's brush through the basic idea of bronies. The term is used to classify adult men who are fans of the My Little Pony cartoon. This is where Matt's fall to internet degeneracy began. He's a brony just like the rest. However, his own story started with a doll he purchased. On May 5th, 2012, a DeviantArt user named Karazu Nezumi posted images of a handmade Twilight Sparkle plushie she had just finished crafting. The plushie was 18 inches tall, painstakingly detailed, and remarkably faithful to the character's design from the show. Nezumi posted it with the intention of selling it. The response was immediate. Commenters flooded in with money offers, and it became so overwhelming that she decided to take the listing to eBay and let the bidding speak for itself. The auction ran for 2 days, and when it ended, the winning bid sat at $600. Who was the lucky winner? A user named Jin. Afterwards, Matt left a comment under Nezumi's original DeviantArt post, which in retrospect reads as one of the most unintentionally ominous things ever written in a comment section. He said it had taken every penny he had, plus money he had to borrow to buy the plushie. He also said that she was his, and he would give her a good home and post excessive pictures of her doing various fun activities. Karasu Nezumi replied warmly, "I'd love to make a plush for you someday. You're a pleasure to talk to, and thank you so much. I can't wait to see the pictures of Twilight in her new home. Love her to bits for me." She was genuinely pleased that her creation had found a devoted owner. Most people on her page buy her ponies for their kids. After all, they are fun plushies that kids can ride and play with. For others, the ponies were like pillows that they could hug and squeeze for sounds. Like this one where a commenter asked what Twilight Sparkle says when squeezed. Nezumi responded, "She actually sings the Winter Roundup song." Karasu Nezumi probably thought that the pony would function in one of these ways. However, she had no idea what would become of Twilight Sparkle plushie after the auction. Over the next several months, the My Little Pony fan community witnessed an outpouring of content, unlike anything they had ever seen before. Matt photographed himself with the plushie at home. Then he took her everywhere, from restaurants to museums, shopping trips, and even brony meetups. Matt introduced her as his partner and referred to her not as a toy or a prop, but as the real Twilight Sparkle, the one from the show. For him, the plushie was her physical form in the material world. He wrote at extraordinary length about his feelings for her, about the emotional intimacy they shared, about the conversations he had with her in which he heard her responses as a voice in the back of his mind. He was, by every measure of his own documentation, completely and sincerely in love with the stuffed animal, and he was determined to tell the world about it. Within certain brony communities, particularly the more adult-oriented spaces, Matt found a reception. Initially, it wasn't wasn't an outright rejection. Some people were supportive, others were curious. Matt saw a confidence boost in this positive attention, so he pushed further and further into explicit territory. He found his way to a forum called Red Light Ponyville, an adult role-play site centered on My Little Pony. He continued to post about his wife and his dedication that earned him followers, regular engagement, and eventually a staff position as a moderator. In his capacity as moderator, Matt tried to control forum activities to his favor, and part of what he wanted to keep in check was how members in and out of the forums treated Twilight Sparkle. He wanted people to respect the pony because she was more than a cartoon character. She was someone he had formed an emotional connection with. So when one DeviantArt artist named Kevin Sano drew explicit images of Twilight Sparkle, Matt lost it. Kevin Sano was known primarily for drawing explicit fan art of My Little Pony characters, including Twilight Sparkle. These pieces are typically called clop art. Now, for the blissfully unaware, clopping is a term used in the Brony community to describe self-gratification with My Little Pony characters. To most people in the fandom, this was normal, and Kevin Sano's art was truly divine. However, to Matt, it was a slap to his face. In his own mind, he was engaged to Twilight Sparkle. For him, an artist drawing her in explicit situations wasn't creating fan art, but was violating his fiancée. So, in order to express his displeasure with the situation, Matt wrote Kevin Sano a message. The message was long, earnest, and completely unhinged, yet sincere. He introduced himself as Twilight's fiancé, explained that they were planning to be married the following summer, and asked Kevin to please stop having his friends draw explicit art of Twilight. He also added that he had found a chapel where they could get married. Twilight is my fiancé, and we're planning to get married next June, or July should everything go as planned financially speaking. I've actually found a wedding chapel that will let me marry someone that most people would consider a fictional character. Matt went on to describe his daily life with the Plushie. He spoke about how they slept together and hung out for dinners at restaurants, coffee shop visits, and social activities with friends. He also made it abundantly clear that he viewed all of this not as a fantasy or a coping mechanism, but as a genuine, committed, monogamous relationship. Matt acknowledged that Kevin probably thought he was either completely crazy or just messing with him, and asked him to hear him out anyway. But at the end of the day, Kevin did not stop drawing Twilight. Nothing in that letter held weight except eventually the part about him and Twilight's marriage. It didn't happen in summer of the next year like he anticipated, but in September of 2013, and Matt even documented it on his Facebook page. He wrote, "Today, Twilight and I did the most spontaneous thing either of us have ever done in our entire lives. We got married." Matt's initial plan was to hold it off until he was financially capable of affording to rent a tuxedo, catering in the rings, but his undying love for Twilight was so strong that he couldn't wait any longer. Not only that, but Twilight herself couldn't wait to become his bride. In his words, Matt said, "Twi once again, as she had done several times before, reminded me that she didn't care about having a fancy dress or a big event with a lot of fanfare." So since they were both on the same page, he contacted the minister over Skype. This minister advised them that they could get married over webcam instead of traveling all the way from his home country, Sweden, to America for the wedding. According to him, the Universal Life Church allowed them to get married digitally. Right then and there, Matt claimed that he held Twilight's hooves. Both of them exchanged vows and kissed. Matt put his wedding ring on her horn, and the wedding was finally concluded. Now that they were man and wife, Matt's overprotectiveness skyrocketed. He believed he had every right to protect Twilight from people who didn't respect her online. Kevin Sano's case didn't end in his favor. He continued to draw more suggestive images of humanoid My Little Pony characters. Matt didn't make any further attempts to stop it. His letter hadn't served the purpose it was intended, but on the other hand, it did reveal something about Jin. It exposed his real name. When a user named Saul Chavez dropped the link to the letter in a public post, Matt reacted to it with an account that bore his real name, Matt Beard. He said, "Somehow I always knew that note I sent to Kevin Zano what seems like ages ago was going to come back to bite me in the rear one day." Matt also acknowledged that he was not proud of it. Unfortunately, this letter would be one of remotely normal things he should have been proud of, because in retrospect, what he did in the months after sending this letter would be the most embarrassing thing ever recorded in internet history. The Kevin Sano letter was indeed embarrassing, but what came next was something worse. Matt banned members whenever they made him feel as though Twilight Sparkle was disrespected. He did this a number of times, banning people without proper ruling. Then the last straw finally came with this particular incident. A user on Red Light Ponyville named Mr. Nameless commissioned an explicit drawing of Twilight Sparkle. Matt's response was not a strongly worded post or even a moderator warning. He didn't even write a lengthy letter like the one he sent to Kevin Zano. Instead, he resorted to trickery. Matt forged messages attributed to Mr. Nameless and manufactured what appeared to be evidence of hate speech posted by the user on the forum. Matt revealed these fake messages and claimed that Mr. Nameless was an enemy of the community. Because he was a moderator with an established reputation and the trust of the community, people believed him. Mr. Nameless was permanently banned for something he had never done. The fraud unraveled days later when an administrator reviewed the evidence carefully and realized it had been manufactured. A public post went up documenting what Matt had done and banning him from the forum he had helped run. Jin is now permanently banned. I know that this is coming as a shock to lofts of you, and as a finally it's happening to others. The reasoning that Jin is getting a permaban is because of all the constant rule breaking he does. Just like that, the man who had positioned himself as the righteous protector of his beloved was exposed as someone willing to destroy a similarly deranged person's reputation over a piece of commissioned art, over a drawing of a cartoon horse. Matt and several friends left and migrated to a nearly dead forum called Los Pegasus, where they proclaimed they would build something new. He sent an open invitation on his DeviantArt page on July 30th, 2015 for all My Little Pony fans to join. The rules of this new space were written to insulate Matt from any criticism whatsoever. Users were prohibited from saying anything negative about him or Twilight. Someone was banned simply for referencing an episode of My Little Pony in which Twilight was perceived to have behaved selfishly. Can you believe that? People were getting banned from this forum for implying that a cartoon pony had a bad day. And here's the crazy part. Matt wasn't the only active person on these forums. His wife Twilight also spoke at times. Here's an example of him and Twilight talking about Matt's love for seeing Twilight. This is how most of their conversations online are framed. Matt would write as he usually did, then add conversation panels of Twilight as if it were a play script. In his mind's eye, he wasn't the one writing on behalf of Twilight. It was Twilight herself who was doing that. This is the level of demented no one should strive to accomplish. Matt and his wife continued their forum escapades for a while, but unfortunately, it didn't last long. The foundations of the forum began to shake. Members drifted away, activities dried up, and the forum itself withered into digital non-existence. These events, from the Mr. Nameless fabrication to the Las Pegasus implosion, are worth dwelling on before moving into Matt's backstory, because they establish something important. Matt is someone with a deep-seated mental problem. So who is this person before the plushie, before the forums, before any of it? To answer that, we have to go back further. The origin of Matt's fixation is not, at its core, or a funny story. It begins in February 2012, during what he has described as the worst depressive episode of his life. This account exists today in Matt's journal, which is documented on Kiwi farms for the world to see. According to Matt, he woke up sad every day. He spent his days sad and went to bed sad. There was a constant emptiness in his chest, a loss of appetite, a complete disappearance of the drive that had defined his adolescence and early adulthood. He had no energy and felt nothing but sadness and despair. The only thing in his life that could really lift him above that fog, even briefly, was watching My Little Pony. Friendship is magic. Matt would watch it for hours at a stretch. It made him smile, it made him laugh. But when it was over, the fog would return. This went on for roughly a month before something changed. The depression began slowly to lift, and the first real emotion that resurfaced in its wake was not happiness or relief, but love. Romantic love, directed specifically at Twilight Sparkle. Matt recognized the feeling immediately because he had experienced it before, years earlier, in a relationship with a real person that had lasted nearly 8 years. Matt claimed that he tried to dismiss it, but it didn't pass and it only intensified. What made his story particularly strange was how much self-reflection his love for Twilight Sparkle caused. Matt admitted in his long journal that he struggled to believe that he was attracted to a female cartoon pony. This is because for the previous 14 years since puberty, Matt had considered himself gay. His attraction had been exclusively toward men. Matt later detailed a bit of his past in this respect. He expressed that he had always known that he was attracted to both stuffed animals and boys after hitting puberty. For 20 years, intimacy with plushies were the only things that felt right. I've always known I love plushies and that with them feels super satisfying. But humans have been another story. Matt disclosed that he had been intimate with over 20 humans, most were men, and a few were transgender men and women, but none of these romantic connections were fulfilling. I've had a bit over 20 human partners over the years, most cis males, but a few trans guys and girls as well, but none ever felt quite right. He had always been drawn to male plushies and humans, and now, without warning, he found himself experiencing what felt unmistakably like romantic and attraction toward a female character who happened to be an animated cartoon pony. This situation caused Matt to grapple with a complete reorientation of everything he thought he understood about himself. If the case weren't about a mentally sick individual, it would have been comical. This isn't satire or performance art. This was a grown man absolutely emotionally devastated because of a fictional character. Matt described nights he spent crying himself to sleep because he wanted to hold Twilight Sparkle but couldn't. He pined for her, wanted to hold, kiss, and tell her he loved her, but he couldn't do any of that. Matt wrote as if he was in so much pain. If you were not paying attention, you'd think these were words cropped from a scene in Titanic, but they were only for a purple pony. This plushie represented the solution to all his emotional problems, and this need is what led to the degenerate Brony we have on the internet today. A Brony who's in desperate need of real therapy, because this particular living situation is not normal at all. After looking at this little entry, there's one necessary question that needs to be answered. What exactly snapped in this man's mind to make him live like this? Matt's emotional state in 2012 is one piece of the picture, but the complete picture will only be known alone when we consider his background. Sadly, this will prove to be a difficult task. You see, there's very little documented information about his family or his childhood. What can be pieced together from scattered journal entries and online posts fixes Matt as a young man who struggled profoundly with being a normal kid. One time in 2018, he admitted that he had been a furry since he was 12, and this has lasted for 21 years. In another journal, he also disclosed that he had first yiffed, which is Brony for to a plush in 1998 when he was 13 years old. Doing the math, this timeline would place Matt's birth year around 1985, and this inevitably means that he's 40 years old in this year, 2026. After piecing this one together, we also discovered another flaw in Matt's past. It's possible that he experienced instability at home because he rarely talks about his family. In fact, he talks more about Twilight's family than his own. According to him, Twilight teleports from the real world to Equestria, her home planet, to visit her pony friends. She does this every week or two, and she makes the trip to Canterlot to visit her parents and brother. In his journal on DeviantArt, he explained that Twilight would teleport out of her body for bathroom visits, and this out-of-body form is how she travels to her home planet. For reference, this is what Twilight looks like in Matt's head. He can go at lengths to talk about Twilight's side of the family. Even when a user on DeviantArt asked who he'd pick between his family and Twilight, he picked his wife, saying that she comes first before anything else in his life. His own family isn't a matter of priority to him. In fact, Matt has opened up more about his online communities than his personal relationships. He mostly urges people to spend festivities with friends rather than family. This offers an insight into how he regards relationships and connections. Friends and community came first. Although he once stated that his family didn't care much about his relationship with Twilight, he mentioned this in response to an ask made on his now deactivated Tumblr account. He said initially they had reacted by saying that it was weird, but his family's stance was mostly accommodating. According to Matt, his family had given this remark: "We don't care if it's weird because it makes you happy and it's not hurting anyone, and we support your happiness." This piece of information is as far as his personal history goes. From the little sourced findings on the internet, it's discovered that Matt didn't live in his family home for long. He had shared a spare bedroom at a friend's apartment when he was in his mid to late 20s. It's possible that this development came after a period of estrangement from his family, though there is no known information online to corroborate this account. Even his claim of them being supportive is left to contemplation, because what family would let their own flesh and blood spiral into degeneracy like this? Matt is not only mentally troubled, he also has a complicated medical history. Matt had been classified as disabled, qualifying him for welfare income, due to a list of conditions that included Graves' disease, lung problems, and chronic stomach issues. The lung problems probably stem from substance use. There are photographs from his online profiles to prove this, photographs which show his Plushie positioned next to a hookah. He even wrote on DeviantArt about how he influenced Twilight into having her first taste of shisha. The stomach sickness has lasted since he was a kid. Matt explained that he dropped out of college for medical reasons, and bowel problems were one of them. In his words, he had chronic ulcers that would make him feel nauseated for 1 or 2 days a week on average, and he would have to lay down for a few hours until it passes. Going through these issues made it hard for him to get jobs and maintain a regular class schedule. "I've always had stomach problems since I was a kid. Irritable bowel syndrome and stomach ulcers mainly. As you might imagine, that makes holding down a job or keeping up with a regular class schedule relatively impossible. It could have also worsened because of his habit of drinking urine in his adult years. And yes, this is something admitted in his tweets along with some other disgusting habits like eating his mess and not bathing for weeks. Matt's poor eating habits would eventually lead to the removal in November 2023. In a post he made, he mentioned how regular consumption of pizza and fried noodles had been a direct consequence. Moving away from his feeding habits, let's take a look at his spending habits and why this factor could have contributed to the estrangement with his family. Financially, Matt was a disaster. His welfare income and student loans are only enough to cover basic living expenses in a situation where his rent was covered by a friend's generosity. And what does Matt spend his money on? Well, if you guessed his wife, then you're not wrong. Matt has spent money on a custom arcade machine commissioned to match his plushie's dimensions. He has bought Twilight Sparkle merchandise to the point that his bedroom looks as if My Little Pony vomited in it. Matt is an adult with the habits of a mentally sick kid. However, these habits take on a new dimension when you take a look at the sick and disturbing hobbies he indulges in with his stuffed animals. His marriage to Twilight, for instance, reveals some shocking aspects of Matt's deepest and darkest habits. When he wrote about his depressive episodes, Matt always talked about how he barely had urges until Twilight came into the picture. Well, he wasn't lying, because after deep diving into intimate details about their bedroom relationship, what we found was thoroughly disgusting. First off, Matt had posted that he and Twilight often exchanged gifts, specifically toys. But a stuffed doll to buying him a toy is the least disturbing detail Matt has ever revealed online. Here's the most disgusting thing Matt has posted online about his intimacy with his wife. And it's not the disciplinary variety. Matt's version doesn't involve pain, domination, or submission because none of them like it. Instead, it involves restraints which are applied gently and lovingly. Then this is followed by what he termed her in various wonderful ways. There are photographs documenting this arrangement, and these images are very inappropriate. Some feature images of his collection of toys, and the most striking of them were the ones with a Matt striking some poses with Twilight. In 2017, Matt posted a video where he admitted that he hadn't intended for the images to surface publicly. They were meant to be for the members of Plush.yif.
We're here because, well, someone has been taking our pictures and possibly videos, I'm not really too sure about that, from Plush.yif and reposting them elsewhere online.
But what grown man would take explicit pictures of themselves with a stuffed animal, share in a forum, and expect them to stay hidden? Since the images were already public material, Matt shed light on the rationale behind it. According to him, he and Twilight operated under a prince and princess arrangement. He found a master and pet dynamic to be distasteful, and therefore adopted this roleplay session, where he called Twilight his little princess. It seems much more loving, and Twi really likes it when I call her my little princess while I'm her. She's never a naughty little filly and I never punish her. She's always my good girl. Matt also acknowledged how hypocritical he was by posting such images online. He recalled how he had publicly berated Kevin Sano for sharing clop art of a Twilight Sparkle. He had positioned himself as the defender of her dignity, but here he was, photographing with her in restraints and not safe for work shoots. Matt's defense was context. What Kevin Sano's friends had drawn was degrading, but what he and Twilight shared was sharing. And he also admitted that Twilight loves it when people goon to her. It's sickening, no matter how you look at it, because Matt was using Twilight to defend himself under the notion that they were married and could therefore post all sorts online. And here's the crazy part. These photos of him and Twilight weren't the only disgusting ones online. Matt also posted pictures of joint bed sessions with his other Brony friends. This is only a glimpse of the kind of degenerate content you can expect from Matt, and the crazy part is that it only got worse in the years following 2015. After Matt's ban from Red Light Ponyville and the collapse of Las Pegasus, he migrated to a broader social media landscape, primarily X, under the username SkippyBCoyote. And with this migration came a new and unsettling version of Jin1515. His all-consuming devotion to Twilight Sparkle, which had been his biggest obsession, suddenly began to fade, and in its place grew something new, Matt's fixation on a character from Paw Patrol named Rocky. Rocky is a small dog in Paw Patrol, a kid's show about a group of animals who go on rescue missions. This television program airs on networks like Nickelodeon and TVO, so you can tell right off the bat that it's designed for kids, but a 40-year-old like Matt latched onto it and formed a deep obsession for Rocky. He once tweeted about Rocky's bedroom eyes. That's how down bad he was for this cartoon character, and Rocky would even go on to be the object he cheats on Twilight with. The transition happened gradually, somewhere between 2015 and 2018. His new obsession quickly consumed the other, and like he did with Twilight, it intensified when he bought a Rocky plushie. Now this is where the story begins to get weird and disturbing. Matt began posting about Rocky, and what he posted were videos meant for an X-rated site for degenerate bronies. These sessions always escalated into full-blown intimacy, and Matt captured everything on camera. This is what Matt did and thought to share on the internet. His picture of his Rocky plushie after these sessions were messy. They revealed Rocky covered in Matt's dried juices. This is similar to what he had done with Twilight, but this was much worse. And this habit would go on for years. Matt would perform these disgusting acts on Rocky and would not wash the plushie. It got so bad that Rocky began to look like it had poop stains smeared around his face. Then out of the blue, Matt began to do the same to other plushies. They weren't from Paw Patrol, however. Instead, these were dog plushies. German Shepherds and other big-sized looking dogs, all covered in his dried matter. Matt had made a habit out of sleeping with these plushies and documenting them online. This behavior became a matter of concern when he eventually adopted a real dog. The dog was a German Shepherd puppy named Carl. Given that Matt had publicly documented in considerable detail activity involving plush toys that closely resembled German Shepherds, it was reasonable to fear what he might do to Carl. To this day, there is no evidence that Matt has been mistreating him, especially in that kind of way. Maybe he only likes plushies and therefore not try anything with an actual doll. Carl's introduction wasn't the main thing that damaged Matt's social reputation to those who didn't know him. In fact, the degenerate got noticed on X for something that had nothing to do with plushies or fetishes or any of the content that had defined his online presence for years. It started with George Floyd. In the immediate aftermath of Floyd's death in May 2020 and the nationwide protests that followed, Matt posted his opinions on Twitter. They weren't particularly bad because he addressed the looting that had occurred during this time. He called the perpetrators anarchists and demanded that the government send in the army. Having watched another night of chaos in my city unfold, it's clear that this is no longer protest for the of George Floyd, or a rally for equality. It's an enormous group of anarchist criminal thugs destroying and looting the city. Please send in the army at real Donald Trump. This was a position that was held by a substantial portion of the general public. The effects of his Floyd tweets were modest compared to what came next. A private WhatsApp conversation between Matt and his friend was leaked by that person and distributed publicly. The conversation revealed something Matt had apparently revealed in confidence. He found the military uniforms worn by German officers during the Second World War attractive. Matt's friend had responded by calling his love for Nazi uniforms a slippery slope, to which Matt responded aggressively, "It just pisses me off. Like, just because I find a particular article of clothing to be attractive, people think I'm going to join some alt-right white nationalist group and start voting Republican?" Matt was aware this was a charged admission and was defensive about it, and then, in the same conversation, in the same defensive register, he made a comment about the Black Lives Matter movement. He said that because everyone around him was supporting it, he felt compelled to oppose it, like a child who does exactly what they're told not to do. And Matt also claimed that he wanted to go Nazi. The exact wording he chose to express this impulse was so racially inflammatory that when the screenshots spread, there was essentially no interpretation available to save him. Matt attempted damage control. He posted clarifications and tried to contextualize. Sadly, the damage was already done. There's no way you can gain credibility after talking about Nazi uniform fetish and racism in a confidential conversation. It's even worse when you consider how much he downplayed the BLM movement with his tweets. Like this one, for instance, where he gave a basic introduction of himself and threw in the hashtag below. Matt drew the wrath of many people, with some calling him a racist cop lover. The harassment continued even long after the Black Lives Matter case. People on Twitter insulted Matt for his love of kids' cartoons. Yeah, it's kind of f***ed up. You have the hots for kids' show characters. You need to get therapy at the minimum. What you tweeted was so f***ed up. Honestly, what the f*** is wrong with you? And he always responded by blocking people. It got so bad that by his own apparent judgment, it was no longer worth enduring. He deleted his Twitter account. Even though he had left the Bird app, Matt's online presence was still tracked down by members of the Kiwi Farms, who had been archiving his activities for years. After deleting Twitter, Matt didn't disappear entirely. Instead, he moved to Blue Sky, the newer and significantly smaller social platform, and resumed posting. Around 2021, he joined the ABDL community, which is short for Adult Baby Diaper Lover, a community of grown-ups who love wearing diapers. In the community, Matt claimed that he had really found a place with his people. "I've made tons of great friends and really found my place in the baby fur ABDL community," and he continues to flash pictures of his diapers. On the topic of his interpersonal relations, Matt has evolved into a much grander space. For the most part, Twilight Sparkle, who had been the beginning of his infamy, doesn't really get much attention as before. She remains his wife, but it's clear from his collection of dog plushies that he has other priorities now. He once introduced a boyfriend to the scene. In one of his posts on social media, Matt shared a photo of a man wearing a fursuit. This person, he claimed, is a friend of 4 years, who's also a plush hoppile. They had been apart for months, and Matt was ready to give their relationship a shot since his wife, Twilight Sparkle, approved. "In addition to a wife, I now have a boyfriend. We've missed each other ever since, and wifey approves, so we're gonna give being boyfriends a try." Matt and his boyfriend went through the same ups and downs as any other relationship. They had breakups and makeups. It's a continuous cycle, but at least it revealed that Matt had evolved to the point of maintaining interpersonal relationships with humans, even though plush hophile connection was demented from the jump. All in all, Matt definitely suffers from a form of mental problem. Some have thought it to be schizophrenia, since he believed that Twilight Sparkle spoke to him and came out of her plushie form all the time. Also, his love for cartoon characters, particularly Rocky, could be a form of projection, seeing that Rocky is canonically 6 years old, and Matt has a strong attachment to it. Whatever the case may be, it's clear that Matt Beard, or Jin1515, needs strong mental evaluation, and until he gets that help, he'll continue to be a menace to society.